Hi there, I'm Mary Susie from Bead Me a Story, and today I'm going to be showing you how to do an unbalanced 4-in-1. This is also known as oops, and we're going to be doing this on the horizontal this time. Okay, so this is a 5-row bracelet, and we're going to work this sideways. This is very similar to just a European 4-in-1, except we're going to make it unbalanced. So you see how our rings kind of go back and forth visually. That is how we're going to approach this. Now, previously, I had done this oops vertically. So this would be the vertical version. You can see this is much more stretchy. This one's a lot easier to work. But the one that people do most often, and that is probably the most popular out there, is this horizontal version. And I think it's because of this pretty wavy pattern that you get, this complete randomness to it. And it is really just a lovely weave. You could make it in more rows, or do portions of it, make earrings out of it. The European weaves are really great. They're a fundamental weave, and you can build a lot of things out of them. And I just want to show you that these can be done in a lot of different sizes, not just this size here. This is one of my most standard size O-rings, which is our 725. Recently, we've gotten 4mm rubber O-rings, and I just want you to see that you can make this in a very teeny tiny micro version. It looks very different in this, makes a beautiful band, and again, this is stretchy. This one's probably more stretchy than the thicker one, but I wanted to do this in one of the densest ring patterns that we could, and I'll just mention to you that you can make this pattern in so many sizes. There's really no limits, from small to extra large rings. This weave will pretty much do it all. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so to get this weave started, I have gone ahead and laid out my rings. You see I pre-opened everything. We've got 5 different colors here. I have lime, champagne, matte gold, blue wave, and matte champagne. Okay, and I laid these 5 out before we started, so that you can see that we're actually going to be working this weave, because it's a closed ring version and not an open ring version where we just do 5 and then we do 5 more. In this project, we're going to actually be working 2 rows really at the same time. So we'll be adding a jump ring row, and then we'll be adding a second rubber O-ring row in the same as we add each row. So in the same series of work or series of steps, we'll be doing that. Okay, so when I start this tutorial, we're going to start by building 2 rows of rubber O-rings, and this will be step 1 through step 5. Now after we get to step 5, then we will have established our first couple of rows, and we're going to do things slightly different. So let's start with our first 2 rows, and in all of the directions for the oops, we don't start with row 1. Okay, so this lime here, we're going to save that to the end. That's actually done last, and we always start with our row 2. So that's a nice reason to lay out your rings before you start anything as you do this, because it'll help you, skip to the second ring first, and then we already know which one's going to be at the bottom when we get to the end. That'll make more sense as we go along. Okay, so step 1, we're going to go ahead and pick up 4 rubber O-rings on 1 jump ring. Okay, and then we're going to close that jump ring. Now, let me lay this down for you. This is something I didn't mention in the tutorial, but it's worth mentioning in a video. And that is mainly, I didn't mention it because I didn't want to get you confused. You just look at the pictures and you follow along. But I want you to notice that these 3 rings over on the left-hand side are kind of a stair step. The one at the bottom is below the second one, and which is also below the third one. Okay, so we're gonna be working in kind of a stair step. Let me move this lime over so it doesn't get in my way. Now my second ring, okay, is my matte gold. So I'm going to scoop underneath this work and keep it the way I had it when it was laying flat. And then I'm going to go down into the right hand ring and come back up out of the third ring, or the top ring, on the left hand side. And then we're gonna pick up 2 rubber O-rings on the right hand side. Okay, and this is gonna even this out. So now we have 2 jump rings. And at the end of this step, we're gonna have 3 rubber O-rings on the right side, just like we had on the left hand side. Okay, so next what we want to do is we want to take our next jump ring, and I'm going to go down into the O-ring on the right, and I'm going to come up out of, oops, I think one of these flipped on me, sorry about that. It was my bottom one. So make sure all this stays in line. See how I got 3 and 3? Somehow when I picked that up, I had one slide over the other side. Okay, so down the top one on the right, come back up through the top one on the left, and then now we're gonna pick up 2 rubber O-rings on the left-hand side of our jump ring prong, okay? And we will close that. Okay, now, just so you can see what we're doing and count, now we have 3 over on the right, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the left, okay? So this, everything we're doing here is based on 5 per row. So I know that the left row is full and the right row is not yet full. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take, this is my 4th ring that I'm adding, but this is actually ring 5 when we had these laid out. Remember, we still have this lime over here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so this is gonna be the last one at the top. And I'm gonna go down through the top one on the right and up through the top one on the left. I'm gonna go ahead and pick up 1 more rubber O-ring on the right-hand side. And then I'm gonna close this jump ring. Okay, so now we have 5 and 4. So you can see over here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 O-rings, and over here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'll just point this out now. You can see this rubber O-ring is in. This one shoots out to the left. This one is in towards the right. This one is out towards the left. So that's, we want all of our rings to be going back and forth as we see this. Okay, and then finally what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our last ring. Now we're gonna be working at the bottom. And I'm gonna go up through 1 ring at the bottom, okay, the one on the left, and then I'm gonna come back down through the bottom ring on the right, and I'm just gonna let the work flip around so it's easy to reach my jump ring. I'm gonna add 1. This was being added to the right, okay, so it's like this. So I was adding this over on the right hand side over here. And then we're gonna close the jump ring. Okay, so that is rows 1 and 2 now that are established. Okay, now we're gonna need to go on, and from this point on, we're gonna be following the instructions of steps 6 through 10, okay? And we're gonna be doing 6 through 10 for the whole rest of the length of this, okay? So we're just gonna keep adding the rows the same way after this. Now, what I'd like to do before we start this is I am going to go ahead and lay out my rings again. The reason I'm going to do this is because we want our rings to fall in kind of like an alternating fashion. Okay, so if we lay them out ahead of time, we can make sure that, you know, that we're not matching our colors side by side every time. You can do that, but, you know, if you want it to have kind of a random look, then this is a good way to do it before you start each row. You know, just kind of lay them out. You can see the champagne is going to be where the lime is, so that'll be kind of next to that. The blue will be next to the champagne. The gold will be next to a matte champagne. Actually, I might even switch these around. I think I'll put the matte champagne down at the bottom here, and I'll put shiny champagne in the middle, so that that's next to that matte gold. Okay, so this is just, you know, these are just ready to go for me. Okay, so again, our bottom one, let's remove that from the picture, and we're gonna start on row 2. Okay, so let's get started with our first ring. This was our second jump ring, and I'm gonna pass up through 3 rubber O-rings. Okay, and then for this step, we're gonna pick up 1 rubber O-ring, and that's our row 3. Okay, so we'll call this row 2, and we'll call the new O-rings that we're adding row 3. Just like any European, I'm gonna kind of disregard the jump rings of calling them a row, because there's always one more row of rubber O-rings than there are jump rings. Okay, so I think it'll just become more confusing if I start talking about the jump rings as rows. The jump rings are just putting together the rows. Okay, so now the next jump ring we're going to add is this shiny champagne. Okay, and to do this next row, what we're going to do is we're going to go down through the first O-ring on the right and back up out of the 3rd jump ring of row 2. Okay, so just through 2, and then we're going to pick up 2 new rubber O-rings. And we're going to close our jump ring. Okay, now for jump ring 3. Now this one's the most confusing one, because when we're doing this side, you see we got 3 here, we got 5 here, okay? And this jump ring, when we add it, we're not gonna add anything to it, okay? So it's just gonna pass through the rings that are already there, okay? So I have the lime jump ring. I'm gonna go down into the 3rd one on the right, so the top one. And then over on the left-hand side, I want this to pass through O-ring 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so it needs to be passing through 3 on the left. And that's the reason why we're not adding any rings. We already added them when we were doing our first rows, our established rows. Okay, so this is where we would have added on the left, but we don't need to add any here because they're already there. And this is the one that can get you the most confused. So just remember, the 3rd jump ring you add every time, it doesn't get anything added onto it. Okay, so we still have 3 on the right, 5 on the left, and I passed up through the top 3. Now this is our last one at the top. I'm going to take my matte gold, and I'm going to pass down through the top one on the right, and then I'm going to pass through the top one on the left. And this time we're only adding 1 rubber O-ring. Okay, so this is 4 that we now have in our new row, 4 O-rings. And we have 5 in our established row. Okay. And then finally, to finish this step, we're going to take this one that we threw off to the side out here. So you remember, we're going to be adding to the bottom. Okay, so we're going to be adding this one last jump ring and then one more rubber O-ring so that we have 5 over here. But that one doesn't get added till the very end. Okay, so I'm going to pass up through O-ring 1 of my second or established row. And then I'm going to let that come around. I'm going to pass through the bottom O-ring of my new row. You remember how the work just flipped around before? That's okay. We're going to add one O-ring. And then we're going to close. Okay, so that is all there is to adding additional rows. As I said, you will add these, the next rows, all in the same way. And again, let's go ahead and lay out some new jump rings before we start. So I'm gonna do, let's do gold, and then lime, and then, let's see, now we'll do matte champagne. Okay, I'm just making sure nothing really matches up. You can occasionally have colors match up. That's actually totally okay if you want to do that. But you know, just make sure that your rows stay random. This is a random pattern, and the nice part is you can kind of plan that randomness row by row as you're going along. Okay, so this is pretty easy to plan out as far as randomness goes because you are laying out each row before you do it. Okay, so I am going to continue on a little bit, review those, the steps. It was 6 through 10 in your tutorial, but as I started this second row, your next row is going to be done in the exact same way. So if you need to back up the video and remember that you're gonna pass through 3 over here, we're gonna set this first ring aside. That'll be done last. Pass through 3 over here, add 1. Okay, and then we're going to pass through 1 and 1, and then we'll add 2, and then we're gonna, on our third ring, we're gonna add nothing, and then on our fourth ring, we'll add 1 more, and then we're gonna come back and do below, and we're gonna add 1 more ring. Okay, so just like the last steps I did, you can just repeat those until you have the full length that you need for your bracelet. And then I'll be coming back for one more segment. I'm gonna pause the video here, and then I'm gonna show you how to connect the start to the finish. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, so to finish the piece, I just wanted to show you the finished bracelet so that you can see, basically I'm gonna have a long strip, and I'm going to be bringing the end strip back up to meet the start strip. Okay, so you know, so let's say this was our starting row and this was our ending row. We're gonna fold this up and around. I just find that sometimes it's easier to show you on the flat, so I'm just gonna use 2 segments here to link together to show you how to make this a continuous row. Okay, this will be somewhat similar to what we've been doing, but it does get a bit more confusing because of course we have 5 rows already here and we have 5 rows already here. Okay, so just like before, we're gonna take our rings and we're gonna lay them out the way we want them. This may not be perfect for the pattern, but that I have here, because these are just 3 starting rows that I did, but I am still gonna take that bottom one, the lime, and I'm gonna set it to the side, and we're gonna do that one last. Okay, now this is my starting row over here. So in my starting row, I wanna go up through the bottom 3, the first 3 O-rings, 1, 2, and 3. And then over here, on the end row, I want to just pass through the second one. So see how that one is actually sticking out towards this work? That'll help you to tell which one you're gonna do. Okay, so we're going through ring 2 on the end row and 1, 2, and 3 of the start row. And then we'll close that jump ring. Okay. Now next we're gonna pick up I'm gonna pick up my matte gold. Doesn't really matter what color you're on. I am trying to do this along with the tutorial just to help you with any confusion you might have, but doesn't really matter what color you're doing. Okay, now this next one is going to go down through ring 4 and 3, and then we're gonna come back up through rubber O-ring 3 over on the left. Okay, so our starting row, we're passing through 3, but first, before we do that, we're gonna pass down through 4 and 3 of the end row. Okay, and then make sure you stay behind the ring that's already there. Okay, passing through 3. This is by far the most confusing part, but being that I told you, I gave you pass through 4 and then 3 and then up through 3. Hopefully the numbers are going to help you because, of course, it's easy to count to 5 and it's easy to see which one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so our next one is going to go down through, I'm sorry, let me get my ring here. Okay, so this one is going to go down through ring 4 of the end row, and then we're going up through 3, 4, and 5. So this would have been in your previous steps, this would have been the one where we didn't add any rings to it. We passed through the one over here, and then 3, 4, 5, and then of course in our next step after this we added this top ring over here. But since the rings are all there, you just have to kind of follow the numbers that I gave you and kind of conceptualize it that way as how you were doing it before. That this next step, that would have been when we're adding that final ring. Okay. And then on this next one, let's see, that should be make sure I got the right color. Okay, the blue. Okay, and now we're gonna go down. So this would have been where we passed down through ring 4, up through ring 5, and then we added a ring 5 to our new row. But since everything's already here, we're gonna go down through 5 and 4. We're gonna pass up through 1. I'm sorry, number 5, the top O-ring of this row. Okay, and then we should be done with the top. Okay, and again, if you watch, see how this jump ring is a little to the left, this one's a little to the right, this one's a little to the left, this one's a little to the right. Okay, so pay attention to that pattern. That's how you're going to know with each row whether you did it correctly or not. Okay, and then finally, I'm adding in my green, my lime green. So we're going to go through the first O-ring of our starting row, and then we're going to go down through 2. Okay, so before, what we would have done is pass through this ring here, gone up through it, come back down through here, and we would have added a final O-ring to our new row. But since it's already there, we don't have to add it, we just pass through it. Okay. Okay, so go up through 1 and let the work spin around. However it works out. I know, remember, you're on you are doing it like this, where you're bringing it up around. So make things move where you need them to move. And then close that final jump ring. Okay? And I know I repeated a color here, but hopefully this will make this easier to see, being that we did two limes in a row. So you can see that all of these jump ring rows, because they're what's going to pop out. You know, we use one color of rubber O-rings, and we use 5 colors of metal jump rings. And the jump rings, their colors are really going to pop out from this, because the burgundy is a little bit of a dark color. And so anyway, you'll be able to see at this point that, you know, all these rows shift left or shift right. These bottom rows shift right. The next row up shifts left. The next row right, left, right. Okay, so you can get that unbalanced look and feel to the work. And just to bring this one back in so you can see that this is all continuous at this point. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this project. This one's a little bit more complex because, as I said, you're adding you know, you're adding a jump ring and an O-ring row at the same time. That can be a little bit more complicated than what you're used to. But basically, these European weaves are really neat. You don't have to work with the size. This works in so many different sizes and different ways. You can have a lot of fun with the unbalanced weaves once you learn them. You can see it gives you kind of a wavy pattern, a nice randomness like waves, and these will look great alone or with other bracelets. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for purchasing our kit from Bead Me a Story. And of course, you can buy more supplies and materials to make these with in whatever colors you choose at beadmeastory.com. And then make sure to check out, I have a whole series on unbalanced weaves out on YouTube. So be sure to like and follow us on YouTube and check out some of our free videos out there. Okay? Thanks so much for joining me. Have a great day.